Okay. Don't set that. Okay. My name is Dylan, and I am a cinematographer and documentary filmmaker. Welcome to another video where I will be looking at another short documentary. We're going to keep doing these until we get to the final film, or my latest film rather. And then I'd like to go into looking at other short documentaries and understanding how they do what they do, looking at their techniques. So today we're going to be looking at my film Healing Julie. I made this film, when did I make this film? I made this film back in June of 2019, which has been some time since then. This is a great example of a film that you do as much as you can in pre-production, and I think it definitely showed in the final product. I heard about Julie's story through a Facebook post that my sister sent me. I called her, and the next thing you know, we're talking about putting this together. And over spring break, I flew out to San Francisco, where she is, which is about 6 hours from me. My team and I managed to do all this within like 4 days. That was really helpful too. If you can, try to assemble a team. I had someone dedicated to be like a sound person. I had a dedicated producer and people keeping me in check with things, which allowed me to be able to focus on the cinematography and focus on, listening in the interviews, so on and so forth. It would be kind of a long video if I went through the entire documentary, 17 minutes long. So I'm just going to pick out a few scenes that I think would be good to talk about and understand and dissect a little bit, I think. And I say I think a lot. I need a new word. It's probably helpful to watch the documentary first, so I'll put a link to it up here where you can watch it and come back and watch the commentary so you can learn more. So we'll get into it. So I chose this as the kind of intro.
Kundalini is the yoga of awareness, and it's super badass. It uses your own energy. You do certain kriyas or meditations or breath work to.
And what I'm doing here is kind of like
get it going.
Showing
it seems kind of weird, like people.
This technique of Kundalini, while also introducing Julie as well
into my life, and I found it to be extremely healing. I mean, I think it's a huge reason why my kidney function is increasing.
Boom. I think it's a huge reason why my kidney function is increasing. That's the line right there. So I chose to start the doc in this way because I wanted to be able to showcase a bunch of things in a short amount of time. One, being a hook. I wanted to create a hook for the documentary to bring people in, starting out with like upbeat music and an activity that's kind of different that people haven't really seen before. It's all kind of eye-catching. It brings you into the doc, so that's a big factor. The music was a little bit hard to decide on, I think, and I even talked to Julie about how she felt about it, and I think she felt different about the music. It didn't really vibe with her. In terms of the documentary and what we had access to, it was just like, I need more upbeat music. I need something more worldly sounding. And I think that's why I just decided to go with it. And she eventually was interested in it as well once I kind of just defined that element. It's not so much of trying to bind the music with her. I'm trying to bind the music with what's happening, I think, and trying to just increase the vibrations of that moment, increase the energy. So another big part of this was just introducing, obviously, Kundalini. This comes into play very much so throughout the documentary, and defining, what helped Julie in her recovery process. So by showing these images, I'm throwing a bunch of questions that will be answered eventually later on in the doc. So I'm throwing out this thing, Kundalini. I'm throwing out this woman, Julie. What is she about? What is her connection to Kundalini? And then obviously the big question, or the big statement at the end of that intro, which was helpful towards my healing process. So I'm throwing a bunch of things out there for people to look at and be interested in, to learn more about. So the second scene we're gonna look at is at the 2-minute mark.
I had systemic lupus, the one that can attack your organs, but I never had any organ issues. It was always affecting discoid lupus, which is when it affects your skin, and that's when I've gotten some really intense, gnarly rashes. It turned into lupus nephritis after 20 years of having lupus. So the lupus went so nutso that this last round it decided to attack my kidneys. By the time I was diagnosed, it was already stage 4 and really aggressive. I started to swell up and my
So
face were starting to get
this whole
exposed,
this whole
and
piece is really interesting
really hard to
because we're just looking at pictures or videos at this point as she's defining the moments of where lupus really affected her the most. So I think it was important for the doc to have this type of access. And if you can find that type of access in your doc, I think it's really helpful to look into that. What helped me get this, I think, was that I prefaced with Julie beforehand things that I was curious about. And I guess you're your first audience member, so that's what I was interested in learning more about. How did lupus affect you and things like that. And then she brought up, oh, I have like all this archival footage of me while I was getting treatment and while I was in the hospital, while I was getting these rashes. And so having the access to all that and her willingness to show all that was really important, I think, for the documentary, because it shows a lot of what the audience is curious to see or know about, and adds to that better understanding and a better connection to her as we see what she went through. So that was really important to the documentary. I don't know, if I didn't have that, it would be a totally different project. This is a really rare case where Julie was recording and taking pictures of herself, which is really helpful. But sometimes you don't have that access, and you may have to recreate things. You may have to, maybe animation, thinking outside the box, if you don't have that kind of access. But if you do, it is really important to make sure your character is giving you as much as they can provide, because without, like I said, without this, it'd be a totally different documentary. Absolutely. So we'll go on to the next scene, which is about Julie's mom.
It's been in this last year that it really hit her hard. To even be determined that you have lupus, you have to have 7 of 11 criteria.
So I literally just had my camera ready.
So 14, she was diagnosed with lupus. And this kidney problem is part of the lupus. So, but she's always fought back and, really did have a positive attitude.
What do you think that comes from? Do you think it comes from you?
I mean, I have a positive outlook too, but I think she has more of a positive outlook. Her cup is half full, mine might be half empty at times, that.
That was a really important moment to capture, and I'm super proud of myself for even thinking of recording that, because what happened was, I think we just filmed some interviews, or we just filmed some B-roll. I had my camera ready, or I was getting it ready. I noticed that Julie's mom came in, and she was going to be someone I was going to ask questions to eventually anyway. But I saw her come in, she was talking to one of the producers who helped me, Aldous, and me. So I have my camera right there, so I picked it up, and I made sure not to do, this, not pointing the camera in their face. I just had it on my lap, and I just angled it a little bit up. And a big thing of documentaries is like, isn't that kind of wrong to record someone without their, permission or without their consent in that moment? And I mean, I told Julie and her family about what was going on beforehand, and they knew a camera was going to be around. They knew that things were going to be recorded. I made sure to obviously show them the documentary after I filmed it and get their approval. And I even had them sign contracts to have their voice and image recorded. So it might be wrong when you're taking advantage of them in some way and you're not being clear. Clear is kind, be transparent with them. And I think I was for this project. I did my best to make sure everyone was comfortable with the way that we were shooting and things like that. Her family is so welcoming and so nice to invite us into their house. Just a big part that I wanted to talk about, though, was what this scene was consisting of, which was capturing a moment. And these are things that you want to strive for when you're making your documentary and film, because you can make a film with just interviews, but making a film with interviews plus actual scenes, actual moments, national sound breaks, that's really good if you can get those moments, because it goes back to that whole thing of drawing your audience in and connecting with your audience. Having these moments feel so raw, feel so real that you're there. And I'm literally there. I'm not feeding her lines. I'm not doing any of that. We're in the moment. That's a big key in documentary filmmaking, is how do you get those moments? Asking the follow-up question as well. Where do you think that comes from? Do you think that comes from you? That was good on me to steer the conversation a little bit and go back to the story, go back to the film a little bit, about talking about Julie and her experience and things like that, and getting the understanding from a different perspective, which is her mom in this case. I guess another point to make in that is just always be recording. It's always really important to have your camera ready. Once a moment happens, it's gone. It's also okay to like pick up your camera, and if it's just happening, you could be like, hey, could you say that one more time? You'll get a different response, but that's why if you start from the beginning with just always having your camera ready, recording, you can really get some honest footage, which is really important for your documentary. So this is the final scene that we'll go ahead and check out.
People down around you. I think it's all about how you look at things. In every moment we have an opportunity to choose.
So it's kind of like a montagey moment. Music comes in
Or I think you can
while
choose
Julie
to
kind
love
of
and you can ask
summarizes
yourself, what is this teaching me? So I say
her experience.
Mantra, it's a Hawaiian mantra, and it is, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you.
And it's
I
kind of
say
just
that
in between that is a lot of just
and
like,
the
I asked
reason
her to
for
like
that
walk
is
around,
saying
and
that
can you sit
mantra
here?
helps
Can I get a shot of you doing
see how you're
this? Can I
feeling
get a
at
shot
that
of you writing in your notebook? Because I know that's something that she did all the time was journal.
And trusting that there is a purpose to it.
Getting lots of coverage in each of these environments that we were in. Got her morning routine. I got her hooking up to the machine.
Kind of flaring up. It was telling me to slow down. It was telling me to be kinder to myself.
Luckily, I got archival footage of her as a kid that she was willing to send me, and that was really great. I was able to pair those two shots there.
Say things to me in an encouraging, loving way, I thrive. But
And then showing her her teaching moments.
I got like this list of affirmations, and
The affirmations were really important. I happened to get coverage of that beforehand
over and over and over,
without knowing
but
that she had
that's
those.
how I wanted to talk to myself.
That was a
I
big
knew that I
part
needed to
of her.
do something to like shift the way that I was speaking to myself. I think that we are all worthy of
Getting shots of her friends and people who have helped her along the way, her family.
And
Pictures of,
I
or
feel
video
like
of
it's really
her
shifted
in the
my entire
hospital,
life.
her starting out, and it's really cool how she was like smiling in that.
I feel like it's allowed my body to heal.
Sometimes I feel like people get stuck when making films, especially documentaries, because they think about what's going to fill up the in-between stuff. Like, you know what to start with, or maybe you have a scene idea and you know maybe generally how you want it to end. But I think it's important to think about the ending, because if you just took this chunk of the ending, you started with that in your edit, I think you could build out the rest of the documentary based on that last chunk of the editing, because this is the summary of everything that we covered so far. So that's just a little tip. If you do get stuck, I think you could just look at building up your ending. What is your ending going to consist of? How do you want this to end? How do you want the audience to feel after watching your film? I think it's really important to end your documentary just as strong as you started it, or even stronger. This is the last thing that your audience is going to take away, and music can really help with that. I had something really like kind of focused and centralized on a few instruments, and there's a lot of like little sound parts where there was a silence and you heard just a little bit of the music, and it really just draws you in. The montages as well kind of helped with that. Literally summarizing things by having a montage of what we just watched. I remember in the edit, like I would watch the ending over and over and over because I just really liked, personally I liked the way it made me feel, because I was like, yes, I did what I set out to do. This is the feeling I wanted to capture and what I wanted to convey to the audience. In terms of final critiques or final review, I think this was a great project that I did. Try to step up the game from my first documentary. I incorporated interviews, I incorporated like really diving into the person's past by showing footage of the past, finding moments, looking for moments in the documentary. That's important, and that's something I didn't really have with my first documentary. I think one big thing to take away is that documentary filmmaking is about being curious. Once you find your story, now you have the freedom to be as curious as you want with that person. So it's about thinking as much in pre-production to set up what you can once you get there, and be curious about things, and it's okay to have it change along the way. Obviously, like a lot changed while filming this, and my intuition of being curious from the start was always something that held through the entire documentary, because that's the biggest part of being a documentarian, is being curious. Ask questions, try new things while you're there, and show the audience what you find. That's really what documentary filmmaking consists of. So I found some notes that I took after I completed the documentary, And something that I think you should do is like write down things that you can improve on, things that you did good on after you make a documentary or any project. And some things that I wrote down were: need to list questions in a better order prior to shooting interview, like I addressed. Say shot name to sync audio. That was something that would have helped in the editing process. I think I just had trouble with syncing the audio with what we did. I was still starting out. I have that pretty good, pretty on lock now. Keep camera on, ready to record anything. That's what I said. And even though I got a few scenes, a few moments where I was recording things that were happening and where I said I was proud of that, I think there were still moments that I missed because I didn't keep my camera on. So have it ready to go, have batteries, like just always be ready. Ask questions during Nat sound moments. Yeah, during those specific moments in the film where I kind of did that. I did ask questions, but it's helpful to be more inquisitive, really listen to what the person is saying and try to ask questions that help drive the documentary or help dive deeper into what's really happening. So that's all I got for this video. I had a lot of fun doing this. It's cool to like revise, and it's a little bit nostalgic, obviously, to go back through the films that I've made over the years. This was a good learning experience. Thank you for watching. Make sure to do all the things of liking, subscribing, and let me know what you liked about this, what you didn't like about this, and I hope to do more, and I'll see you in the next review. Thanks for watching, and bye.